Central and members of various social clubs. He is a Honorable Treasurer of Kerala Management Association, and he is a member and advisory board to the St. Stages College, Ernakulam. With these few names, I am introducing CA Jaman K. George to the August gathering.
Welcome, sir. You may start with your session.
Thank you, Ma. Good evening to all of you. Very dynamic chairman, very active dynamic chairman of the Vizag branch. Chair Ma, it's not chairman, chairperson, Madam Bharti Devi. Managing committee members of the branch, including Prashant, who has given a very detailed introduction of me. It's a small correction. It is not 1,000 students, it is 10,000 students I have taught. No problem, it is only an oversight. Just wanted to highlight that because teaching and interacting with members on the knowledge front is something which I am very passionate about. Precisely why I am here this evening with you. Other managing committee members, respected senior members, illustrious past chairman of the Vizag branch who have spent substantial amount of their professional time, personal time, family time for bringing up what Vizag branch is today. I vividly recall my visit to Vizag last year as chairman SIRC and the reception which the warmth and the cordiality with which I have received right from the airport to airport, and the Purna Kumbha which was there for the reception and all that is fresh in my memories. In fact, there is a photograph where you see Prasanna, Chalavadi, myself, Naresh, Chinna, all of them. It is displayed in my room here because when I came back after completing my chairmanship, my partners gave a small collage in which I am wearing the traditional cap of the king of SIRC, which is a position which was assigned to me by all the members with all their love. Recall the good times. Today we are unfortunately confined a little bit due to this pandemic situation. But immediately after that, I would still like to visit branches wherever possible, interact with members. And today special thanks to Prasanna Garu, who is a patron for me. I started my first year in the SIRC as a newly elected member under his guidance. And even today, he continues to be a great source of support, encouragement, and inspiration for me. Also to Chinna Mastan, who has been instrumental in me addressing the branch. And extremely happy that so many of us could get together. I think the numbers are ticking. We have 31 participants as of now. And this is a topic which, as a Chairma has rightly set the tone for the presentation. One is, we are after the COVID. If it 1920, probably we would have completed many of the audits by now. But this year, the 2021 bit, that's audit of 1920, many of us are yet to start, except for listed companies and all that. Smaller towns like Cochin and Vizag. Of course, Vizag is a big town, big city, I know. And Andhra Pradesh has once again bagged the best ranking in ease of doing business. It should be good news for all our fraternity there, because more businesses will come. And we are the people who should enable businesses getting established in Vizag or Amravati, wherever, all of Andhra Pradesh. So wish you all the very best. Extremely happy that the state is doing so very well in terms of being investor friendly. Investor friendly environment, climate is essential for our profession to grow and foster. And our members should gear up, not only on the conventional areas, newer areas like business valuations, loan syndication, feasibility reports. There are a lot of areas where one can really specialize and develop expertise on to be in the service of the businesses and the society, which will help in the building of the state and also the nation. So that's why we proudly call ourselves partners in nation building as chartered accountants. So once again, a big thank you to the organizers, the branch, and of course, Prasanna and Chinna for giving me this opportunity. I will move on to my presentation, the specifics of the presentation, for which I have a short PowerPoint with you. I'll try to share the screen with you now. Is it visible, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. So, company audit and COVID-related announcements of ICAI. In the wake of COVID, the ICAI has come out with a few pronouncements. This should be referred to and applied to also. Bharati Devi did make a mention about the going concern. Conventionally, we treat it as going concern as an assumption, accounting assumption, but not a safe assumption anymore in the context of the situation that we are in, or we are auditing in situations like never before, and hopefully never again also. With a lot of restraints and limitations on moving around, going to the client's place, online audits and things like that, a lot of things which we are confined to. With that, the methodology should slightly change, the approach should slightly change, and Institute has come out with the required guidance about which we'll see as we go by. Now, company audit, a brief introduction. I'm sure that all of us are doing one way or the other. People tend to say that, sir, in Vizag or Vijayawada, we do not have many company audits, which I beg to disagree. All of us do some company audits. C&AG audits, we all of us do. Companies Act 2013 is not a settled law. The familiarity has to be substantially better. All of us are still reading and understanding the Companies Act, which is still being amended because ease of doing business and all those things are on the highest consideration, top on the agenda. So Act has to be made a little more soft and less draconian, so to say. So here we have a well-defined statutory framework under the Companies Act 2013. Chapter 10 deals with audit and auditors, section 139 to section 148. Then we have the whole set of professional pronouncements issued by the ICAI, which is accounting standards in the preparation of financial statements, presentation of financial information, and auditing standards when it comes to discharging the attestation function. Thirdly, we have very specific reporting requirements. CARO 2013, which we are reporting in. So where we have CARO 2020, but that's applicable only from the financial year, this financial year. Today we are discussing audits of financial year 1920. Year is already concluded, we are doing the audits now. So CARO 2016 has to be applied for as we applied in the previous year. And also we know specific reporting requirements, fraud reporting under 143.12 and all that. Then of course, the last point is what we'll highlight today, the COVID pronouncements of ICAI. 6 of them, and we will see each one of them one by one as we go by. The backdrop is, I did mention, Chapter 10 of the Companies Act 2013. Those 10 sections, both inclusive. There are a lot of consequential changes in the audit function. And penalties are very high. Yesterday we had a discussion on company deposits at SARC by Guraj Acharya from Bangalore. So in Chapter 5, if you look at the penalties, will run into crores of rupees, plus 6 months of imprisonment and all those things, or with both. And here also 143.12, not fraud reporting. 147 penalties are very high, so one has to be extremely careful in dealing with the company audit provisions. One cannot be passive. So I'm sure that sessions of this sort, though we are not physically meeting virtually, all of you are in front of the system, giving due attention to the topics we are discussing. Hopefully with that, we will enrich a little more by the end of the session and to be developing a better approach, more in-depth and focused approach on company audit as we discharge this in the standing at the threshold of the audit season. And the good news, I hope I had sent a mail, I don't know whether all of you have received that. I'm serving as chairman of the Corporate Law Committee at SARC this year. We had made a representation to the Central Committee, who in turn made a representation to the MCA, and the due date for holding the annual general meetings have been extended by 3 months. So the 39/2020 cases can all go have their AGM held up to any date up to 31/12/2020, which is a notification which jurisdictional orders have been passed by the registrars, ROCs, under 96(1) of the Companies Act. So with that, we have some more time to spend time and do the audits carefully. On the screen, sir, what you are seeing is the screenshot of that Chapter 10 of the Companies Act 2013. Now, how do we read the Companies Act? If we have to make a reference to the Companies Act 2013, we used to have the glittering Ramaya. Those who are in company law practice, seniors also would agree. We had a glittering Ramaya, 4 volumes. Then we have the schedules. It is still in my shelf. I'll go to the archives now. Today, the only way we should read the Companies Act 2013 is by referring to the e-book. Go to the MCA website. On the left-hand side, you would see the e-book Companies Act 2013. That is, this is a screenshot of Chapter 10. starting with 139, appointment of auditors, and going up to 148, which is cost audit. Very important section in between is 143, powers and duties of auditors and auditing standards. Standards on auditing are today part of the statute book. They have been made mandatory. So we'll see some of these sections as we go by. So these sections one should be reasonably familiar with. And the preceding chapter, chapter 9, is on accounts of companies. 128 deals with books of accounts, 129 financial statements. In that, of course, we have 135 corporate social responsibility, 134 boards report, financial statements. All those things are covered in accounts of companies, chapter 9. Here is chapter 10, audit and auditors. And there is companies audit and auditors rules of 2014 also, which should be read together. Companies Act 2013 is a delegated legislation, and one has to read it with reference to the rules. Only then that will make complete sense. So, reference to the Companies Act, I am requesting younger members to familiarize more with the Companies Act. Yesterday, while making the introductory remarks for the session at SIRC on deposits, I was urging members to reinvent corporate law practice. Company law practice, we should all do that. Multi firms with 5-6 partners. Why is that everyone is lost in taxation? Why is that everyone is buried in GST alone? Newer areas one should look at. And possibly combine the company law practice with one partner should become an insolvency professional, IBP, registered valuer. With all that will make sense. We can render multiplicity of services, particularly again to complement you. Andhra Pradesh, which is ushering in the new era of the businesses in India. And I'm sure that with the global dislike on China in the wake of the recent developments, a lot of businesses will relocate to India. And where do they look at first? Alphabetically, you are the first one in the order of the states. But in ease of doing business and enabling businesses, you are number one. So I'm looking at you with some kind of an envy that a lot of businesses are going to come there, and you should facilitate business establishment in the state. So for all that, this familiarity is very important, and corporate law is being simplified. Some of you would have read that the recent statement is about decriminalizing the Companies Act 2013. Decriminalizing, because the penalties are so high, one gets scared. To be an independent director, if you're invited, you will think twice, thrice whether I should become an independent director. If there are non-compliances, what are the liabilities I would put to? Whether my reputation will be marred and so on. So all that is being eased and decriminalized and softened over a period of time. So that is the backdrop in which we are. Before we go into the topics, let's just look at the recent FRRB findings. Financial Reporting Review Board comes out with its findings once in 3 years. The second edition of the finding, you have the soft copy, you can Google up to the Institute new website also. It is much better than what it used to be. A lot of changes have happened. In the COVID era, we should thank our council members, central council members, all of them. You have Prasanna from Vizag, we have Babu Abraham from Cochin, we have 6 of them from South. The work which is going on through online meetings is phenomenal. And we look at the COVID pronouncements itself, it will become very clear. Institute is not idling. Online, interacting with members, doing a lot of empowerment programs, Board of Studies doing classes, cloud campus, all those things. Excellent job is being done. And SSP has kind of settled in. SSP, the number of issues have substantially reduced. UDIN, we are all now getting used to. We are going to discuss that a little later. So FRRB's findings say that there are a lot of non-compliances in financial reporting by corporates. By listed corporates as well as big unlisted entities. Accounting standard non-compliance, if you draw a pie chart, it's as high as 74%. Companies Act 2013, Schedule 3, the format of the company or financial statements, 13%. CARO non-compliance. Lot of points are not being reported properly. And towards the end, it is standards on auditing. They haven't made it in terms of percentage. They said the scant regard, total disregard by the members, very passive. But let me warn you that standards on auditing is today part of the statute book. Companies Act 2013, 143(9) makes it mandatory for auditors to comply with auditing standards. And what if we don't? The NFRA is gaining foot. 132 of the Act has been enacted. The National Financial Reporting Authority's case, they have taken very harsh action against Deloitte Haskins partners and former partners, penalties running up to 25 lakhs and a ban for 7 years from doing any audit or internal audit. So with all that, one has to be extremely careful. I would like to recall two recent experiences which I had. One was in Bangalore, a friend of mine who's practicing there. It was about 2 years back, not very recent, sent me a set of financial statements. It was a company in education space, tech education space, and very highly profitable. About 60 crores of top line, 20 crores of bottom line. Post-tax, very, very good company, performance-wise. It was being audited by a senior chartered accountant with close to 30 years of experience. I have 28 years of experience when I was introduced. Hair is not gray because of L'Oreal and Godrej and all that. So, so with that, this balance sheet was sent to me. He said, my friend said, Joe, can you go through this and say whether these financial statements are presentable? Because we are expecting a foreign private equity, which will happen in Andhra Pradesh now, I'm telling you. A lot of private equity players would come in there. Companies would go for IPO, public issues. Financial reporting has to be proper. And we did an exercise in our question office. We sat, some of the senior students, partners, we sat together for half a day and found that 13 of the accounting standards were not either fully complied with or not complied, partly complied. There's no mention about deferred taxation. It's a private limited company with a lot of timing differences, depreciation on equipments and so on. EPS, there was no, AS20 was not complied with. A lot of examples I can tell you. So we made all this, sent a report, and my friend who did this exercise, he presented it on his official stationery and he got the internal audit of the company, so on the story goes. So the entire financial statements had to be restated to make it presentable. Similarly, last year, my friend's son came to me for doing an expansion proposal, project report, for expansion proposal of a distillery in Kerala, North Kerala, there's a distillery. Again, audited by a senior chartered accountant from Chennai. I found that the financial statement presented absolutely not only wrong, misleading ways of presentations. Pre-operative expenses, for example, was shown as a bracketed item from revenue reserves. I don't know how the tax assessments got through. This should have been capitalized to the extent they were commercialized or commissioned, and then should have been added to the cost of the respective assets and written off prospectively. Instead, showing pre-operative expenses as a bracketed item from reserves and all that. So we look at financial reporting. It's not that I'm perfect. All of us are trying to improve. The baseline of our firm, you can see on the bottom of the presentation, is bigger, better, bolder. Bigger is aspiring to grow. In the profession, in the service of the members of the profession and so on, one is being ambitious to grow bigger, adding more partners, adding more students, getting better technology. All those things are very, very important. Revenue, top line, bottom line, all those things are very important. Better is improving the way we render. COVID has taught us that we are not sufficiently leveraged on technology. Smaller practitioners like you and me. Not talk about the big first layer firms. And we did that in a short span of time. We leverage substantially better on technology. Today we have real-time access to our servers. We can work from anywhere, even from your mobile. You can access client data and so on without much of a cost. But we needed a shock treatment like COVID to say that this has to be enabled. There are data slowly being addressed. Why are we remaining small? Why don't we take up a bold initiative of opening a branch office, adding some young partners, training somebody to become a partner, networking, affiliations, all those things, bold. So we do need to really work on growing bigger, doing better, and taking a lot of bolder initiatives. That's very important. So the Chennai example, I was just concluding on how very badly the financial statements were prepared. a senior member, and this is a very Andhra Pradesh, Mr. Injati Srinivas. Because of certain audit failures, he made a blanket comment. We do not expect the auditors to find a needle in a haystack, but they must see the elephant in the room. And this is making a lot of rounds in the media. The Business Line on 1st of July, which is a CA day, carried an editorial captioned as a contemporary CA. The last paragraph of that editorial said, "The elephant in the room is making rounds in
That's all. So there is some technical issue from the speaker side, sir. He'll just join in a minute, sir. Okay, welcome back, sir. Sir, not audible, sir. So once you try now, sir, to unmute yourself and speak.
Yeah, I'm through.
Okay.
Sorry for that slight technical interruption. Let me try to share the screen again. Is it visible now? Yes.
Yes, sir, visible.
So, yeah, clinging on to the old Kingston Cotton Mills case delivered in 1896 as an insurance policy is not advisable anymore. Our friend Mohan R. Levy from Bangalore had written an article again in Business Line, a half-page article on what the audit profession is going through and how we should focus. See, in this judgment, the Judge Lopez said that the auditor is only a watchdog, not a bloodhound. But today, being a watchdog is not enough. This is what Amit Chopra sir said, our past president. Auditors cannot be just watchdogs, at least be barking dogs. And we are given a whistle to blow. If you do not blow the whistle, yes, the whistle will be taken away. Already there is NFRA, the regulatory power which the ICA used to have on its membership. Yes, it's still there, but NFRA has seemed to be having stronger, sharper powers on the membership of the profession. So therefore, one has to be extremely careful, and only then, if we individually improve, it will collectively reflect on the capability of the profession. And it is not the brilliance of the few; it is the competence of the many. We should take the profession forward. With that introduction, let me move on to the little more of specifics. What are the new publications which have come in recently is about the accounting and auditing advisory, impact of coronavirus on financial reporting and auditors' consideration. A joint publication of the Accounting Standards Board and Auditing and Accounting Standards Board. It came on 27th March. Immediately after we went into the lockdown, the institute was working on that and then came out with specific aspects of how each standard should be seen in the wake of COVID. We will see as we go by in the next few minutes of the presentation. Going concern, as Bharati ma'am rightly said, going concern is a concern. You know, companies in tourism, aviation, mass entertainment, all of them are finding it difficult to pull on. Those who came for the regional conference here, we had the beautiful venue of the Lulu International Convention Center, Grand Hyatt. But post-March, March 25th, no single programs happened there. 3,500 capacity are the hall where we had the program. Another one with 1,200 capacity and smaller banquet halls. The entire facility is idling. The associated costs are huge. Maintenance costs, it has to be kept in good condition. Because hopefully 3 to 4 months from now, that is what the WHO and the ministry expects, that the vaccine would be out, and with that the scare would go, and then it would become another fever headache kind of a disease. But then for recovery to happen, it will take a lot more of time. Therefore, going concern cannot be a safe assumption anymore. Technically speaking, going concern, consistency, approval are all accounting assumptions, but not in the COVID scenario, where many of the entities may have to discontinue business or substantially reduce the volume of business, discontinue certain lines of businesses, hive off certain businesses. All those things can happen. So one has to view it with a lot of care and I would say a little bit of suspicion. And before I go into these pronouncements, I would like to invite your attention to SA 200, Standards on Auditing 200, which is a takeoff standard, overall objectives of an independent auditor and the conduct of an audit in accordance with standards on auditing, in which in 2008, for the first time, the APC was set up in 1982, we know. So 26 years later, the APC, which is now called the AASB, Auditing and Accounting Standards Board, started using this term called professional skepticism. I repeat, professional skepticism. Being a little skeptical, being a little doubting. What is professional skepticism? In layman's terms, it is, sir, we agree with you, we understand, we trust, but we would still like to verify. Please show me some document as proof of what you have told me. And it's also meaning that we do not take people, or this finance manager who's the company for 20 years, how do we distrust him? He is a tried servant of the company as held in Kingston Cotton Mills case. And therefore we can take him for granted. No explanation can be taken for granted. So that is professional skepticism. If you go through this, the 5-6 pronouncements which is COVID related issued by the ICAI, everywhere the spirit is that the concept of professional skepticism, being doubtful, should stand amplified. I repeat, stand amplified. This is something which one has to keep in the back of your mind when we are discharging audits of 1920, more so in 2021. The impact would be more in 2021 financially. Some more time to go, we'll see. Many of the businesses have not actually resumed. And Vizag, we also had a tragedy when the factory was reopened. There was some inflammable material and we lost some lives there. I did call Chalapati Rao and all that to find out whether our members have been affected at that point of time. So then the third point is about physical inventory verification. So 31st March, none of us were able to do physical verification. It was a nationwide lockdown. Subsequently, in April, maybe May, some of them opened. So were we able to make sure that the management has done physical verification? Management has done physical verification. Could we send our assistants to supervise physical verification of larger units? I'll share with you examples where recently we had to do it for a multinational firm based in Pune. I'll share that experience a little later. So physical inventory verification, then auditors reporting key audit considerations amid COVID-19, subsequent events, key audit considerations amid COVID-19. So subsequent events, we have a standard on auditing. We have accounting standard also, AS4, where it says that the subsequent developments after the balance sheet date, till the date we sign the auditor's report, if there are events which are adjusting events, brings additional evidence that an asset has been impaired. For example, some of the debtors have completely disappeared, absconded. That money is not traceable. We may have to make a provision as on 31/3/20. Inventory values would have depleted substantially. We may have to take a hit as on 31st March. All those things have to be taken care of. That is subsequent events. Now, a few things which are important from the company audit point of view, which some of us are not fully aware of because we are not actively tracking the changes. My colleagues, cash flow statement is today part of financial statements. Except very small companies, everyone has to prepare financial statements. We will see which are the companies which are exempted as we go by. Schedule 3 has settled in from 2013, but still we are seeing a lot of non-compliances as found by FRRB. And also when we analyze some of the balance sheets which come to us audited by medium-sized firms, we see that Schedule 3 formats are not there, complied with. Two formats are there, as you know, I hope. One is the accounting standard format. The other one is Ind AS format. Ind AS for larger companies. Depreciation now is based on useful lives. I hope we are by this time used to seeing what is the useful life and all those things. Based on that, we arrive at the rate, SLM rate and written down value method, and so on. We proceed. Companies' accounting standards were amended in 2016. We will see. These are just a bullet point. We'll explain one by one. Ind AS is made applicable to certain companies. Talk about IFRS. There's no IFRS in India. It is IGAAP, which is smaller companies, the accounting standards for smaller companies. Then the Ind AS, Indian accounting standards, the Indianized version of IFRS. Okay. Then look at the second bullet point, very, very important, but many of us are still very passive about it. Auditing standards are made mandatory. 143, the section is captioned as powers and duties of auditors and auditing standards. 143.9 says every auditor shall comply with auditing standards. It is not under the institute standards. It is not under the thick booklets we get as institute pronouncements. It is part of the statute book, mandatory line under the Companies Act 143.9. Every auditor shall comply with auditing standards. Still we are not complying. CARO 2016, yes. ICDS, yes. Income computation disclosure standards are applicable from 1617. Some of us are not giving the required attention to that. New format of the auditor's report, which is SS 700. This year we have, last year onwards, 18-19 financial onwards, we have the new reporting requirements, KAM, Key Audit Matters. For the time being, don't worry, for the time being, it's only for listed companies. So for 1920 audits also, if you're a listed company, auditor for a listed company, you have to be very specially looking at KAMs. I read some good annual reports, auditors report. Some of them have brilliantly given in a chart format. It will be in a chart format. What is the key audit matter on the left-hand side? And how the auditor has addressed the key audit matter and therefore derived some kind of a comfort so as to avoid an audit qualification or emphasis from a paragraph. This is something very important. Fraud reporting penalties for failure. These are the things which are very new, relatively new. We'll see all that in detail. Now, quickly, you may think that I'm touching upon basics. But today in some of the branches, when I started doing this presentation, I asked, what is an audit? Why is an audit and how an audit? Why an audit we know? Because of the audited financial statements are laid upon by multiplicity of users. So what is prepared by the management of companies have to be evaluated, subjected to an independent review called audit by an external professional. And with that stamp of an opinion of the auditor is that it is held out to the public. When the Prime Minister said that your signature is more valuable than my signature, he was giving us a compliment and of course a word of caution. The government, the governmental schemes, the financial institutions, the banks in the country are placing huge reliance on the work done by you, on the attestation done by you. So if your validations are not proper, it will derail the economy. If there are bad loans in the banking system, can we disown fully? If there are a lot of defaults happening, if non-existent stocks lying in company balance sheets, not realizable receivables coming in company balance sheets, if the auditors are blindly certified, then we have a huge problem of having 15 to 16 lakhs of bad loans in the system, which would again probably double with the COVID issue and so on. That's on a macro scale. Therefore, the audit process, some of the things which we have forgotten has to be revisited. This may sound very elementary or even rudimentary for some of the members. But I have a feeling that most of the places we see, the students have also developed that kind of a culture where they say that preparation of financial statements from a balance sheet is what is an audit. And we do that mainly for tax filing. ROC filing, of course, as I mentioned, the company secretary will do it. Most of the cases, we are not doing it. So audit process is completely different from preparation of financial statements. It cannot be confined. We may have to help our clients, even in listed space. The corporate accountants may not be fully geared to prepare Schedule 3 balance sheets, comply with standards, accounting standards and so on, Ind AS if applicable. We may have to help them, but audit consideration should remain of paramount importance, the basics being opening balance checking, internal control evaluation, we call them compliance procedures technically, and communicating audit findings to those charged with governance. The new term which is there, those TCWGs, those charged with governance. Interchangeably used with the management, but need not be a board or a TCWG can be somebody like a general manager operations, can also be with the governance powers and direction. Vouching is the essence of auditing. I've been teaching auditing for 20 years. Ledger analysis, do we do ledger analysis these days of the clients? We say that the client data is already with us, the tally data is already with us, but run through, even on the screen, make notes, and notes need not be physical today. The other day I asked for a ledger analysis notes to a student. She said, sir, in the client folder it is there. The client folder is there. And then she brought the laptop and showed it to me, and then it was fine. It need not be returned, and all those color ticks may not be there, but it has to be properly tabulated. Verification of assets, stock, documents of title. Many of us still do not do. In the CARO, when the CARO was amended, there's a point whether all the immobile properties in the balance sheet is held in the name of the company. One was prompted to ask, it goes without saying, all the immobile properties shown in the balance sheet of the company should be registered in the name of the company. There should be a mutation in favor of the company, and the tax should be paid in the name of the company. It goes without saying. But factually not, my dear colleagues. 3 years back, we were appointed by the official liquidator Kerala, High Court of Kerala, to do an investigation into a company which had run some Ponzi schemes, and company went into all kinds of troubles. In that balance sheet, when we did the investigation, 18 high-value properties in the heart of Cochin town, running into crores and crores of rupees of value, were not in the name of the company at all. It was all in the name of the managing director, sometimes jointly with his wife. Even in the address, the company's name was not there. Was audited happily by a senior chartered accountant who is no more. Last year he expired. Very senior auditor. By just passing an entry, land account debtor or land and building debtor to director's loan account or director's current account. A JV is passed. And this person did not have the wherewithal, or rather he didn't bother to examine, call for the original title deeds and see, not even copies for that. One of my audits this year, which came transferred to me, the auditor resigned, came transferred to me, same experience I'm having land and building, land, vacant land near Kochi for a hospital project. We asked for the opening balance, we checked, it's all fine, brought forward from the previous year, ticking there, ticking here, all fine. We asked for the originals of the title deed. More than 1 month now, we haven't got it. They're still searching for it. I checked whether mutation has been done, tax has been paid. Hopefully we'll get it this week. But without that, the previous auditor had never asked for it. And 2-3 cases of advances given for land purchase. Pending into lakhs of rupees, we said, where is the agreement? If you're given an advance, there should be an agreement. And why is that the agreement is not concluded? Because it's in the balance sheet for the last 2 years, same amount, advance for land. Now they are digging and seeing whether those documents are there. So title deeds, verification of physical assets. This year I'm making it a point to visit all my clients. My partners go. When we go there, we take a selfie with the managing director. Some of our friends, but we take photograph of the machinery, the stock, the work in progress, all those things we take and keep those photographs in the client folder. Making sure that these things are there. Maybe non-existent situations can happen. Stock verification, 31st March we could not do. So at least do it now. Stock verification doesn't mean that we have to do it physically. Make sure that the management does it and we oversee this stock verification. Now I'll share with you what Ernst & Young got it done through us. For a company, a client who's my friend in Rotary, he called up and said, Jomon, they're not able to come. So they have asked us to hire a CF firm to do physical verification of stock in their Cochin factory. My partner, we gave consent, quoted the fees, and specifically told him, friendship apart, there is no credit. We'll give the report on Saturday evening, and Monday the payment has to come. We agreed on the fees. There was a request for a discount which was heard, but then we fixed it in writing and got it done. The first instruction was to go in front of the factory, take a selfie. Groovy, my partner and my team, 3 of my assistants. Then immediately WhatsApp to the person who is supervising the thing in front of a system in Pune. Then the entire stock verification process was videographed and live streamed to Pune. One person was sitting in front of the computer. They gave us 10 samples of raw materials and finished goods. In addition, during the lunchtime, they said, we would like you to take another 5 items of raw material and finished goods random and then see whether they are matching with us. And they are under the SAP. Stock records are updated, except for some minor differences we reported came out well. So that kind of exercises are being done, but we do not even go to the client's facility. Send our students. Sometimes we take it for granted. That should not happen. So is the case with documents of title as given in this example. Comparing financial statements with books of accounts. A lot of closing entries are being passed. Finally, do we get a signed trial? This is a very basic aspects, but I'm asking you, touch your heart and ask yourself, are you all getting this done? Do we have a signed trial balance? Tally data is there, but who wants it? Final printout, a trial balance, you ask the general manager finance to sign or finance manager to sign. He will say, sir, no. You have to make sure he signs. Groupings of, sometimes we make, groupings should be got signed. Analytical review, accounting standard compliance, AS compliance. Very poor, sir, very poor. Notes on accounts, still 1 page notes on accounts. Disclosure of accounting policies, valuation of inventories, foreign exchange, government grants, fixed assets, depreciation, deferred taxation, earnings per share, provisions, segment reporting if applicable, and so on. The story goes. So one has to be extremely careful in making sure that Schedule 3 compliance, make sure that the disclosures are proper. The younger team, if you have young students, I think that's something which you should really focus on. Get a young team on board in our offices. And they would do the digging up and then say that the compliances are proper under your supervision. Carve-out points have to be gathered carefully and we have to do informed reporting. So that's about the audit process. Ma'am, am I audible? Is it going okay for you? Can some of you respond? Can the chairman respond?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I can go on. I can continue.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Vladimir. Okay. Now we'll come to COVID pronouncements. Before we see into that, we'll have a quick look at the accounting standards. So today we have 29 minus 2 accounting standards, but I cannot say 27 because they have not been renumbered. AS 1 disclosure of accounting policies, AS 29 provisions, contingent liabilities and contingent assets. From out of the 29, AS 8 was withdrawn long back. It was research and development. Research and development is also now dealt with in accounting standard 26 dealing with the intangible assets. 2016 amendment, they have withdrawn AS 6 also. Younger members should be able to tell me what AS 6 is. You can give it in the chat box also. AS 6, somebody can unmute and say, or put in the chat box also quickly. So these two standards are withdrawn. All other standards will continue to apply. Medium companies, there are certain exemptions which we will discuss as we go by. Companies accounting standards amendment rules came in 2006. With that, there are two major changes. One is the proposed dividend. The concept of proposed dividend is not there anymore. Like for example, 2019-20 financial year, we are doing the audit now, almost over. The board is deciding to recommend a dividend of 10%, 15%. Earlier, we used to make an entry on 31st March 2020 as proposed dividend, and also used to provide for corporate dividend tax or DDT. According to AS 4 revised, a dividend recommended post the closure of the year is not an adjusting event. Therefore, no accounting entry is required. It needs to be mentioned in notes on accounts only. Board's report, yes, you will mention, because when there's a dividend, you'll be very loud, vocal about it. And then this one is the notes on accounts we have to see. As I mentioned, depreciation standard is withdrawn. Now that is in accounting standard 10. Accounting standard 10 has also been renamed. Accounting standard 10 is renamed as property, plant and equipment. It is not accounting for fixed assets. Paragraph 40 to 60 of AS 10 deals with the depreciation. Associates and joint ventures need not be consolidated. This is slightly technical. We will see a little later. These are the major changes in accounting standards. So some more of them is accounting standard 15. It's a very common mistake. If you are a company, I repeat, we are discussing company audit now. If you are a company, irrespective of the number of people you have to provide a gratuity liability on the basis of actuarial valuation only. Actual valuation is mandatory. You have to get it done by an actuary. The accruing liability has to be provided for. But funding is not mandatory. Funding is like, for example, you become part of a group gratuity scheme. Many of our clients, they're also, I'm sure, will be LIC group gratuity scheme. That is funding. Funding is not mandatory. But if you are funded, I'm getting a little technical here. I hope you'll be able to understand. If you're funded, in addition to the accruing liability of gratuity every year, you will have to make up for the loss in the value of plan assets also. If your investment in plan assets, the value stands depleted, 31st March 2020, yes, it did go down. Then the reduction or the depletion in the value of plan assets should also be provided for in the P&L. Those who have done the tabulation for AS 15 would agree with me that it's not very easy, easier said than done. You have to arrive at the detailed computation statement given by the insurer. Based on that, you will see how much is the debit to your P&L account, how much would be your plan assets, how much is the provision, and so on. And all those discount rates and all those things we have to disclose as required by AS 15. So this is standard which reads some more of compliance. I'm jumping over to AS 26. There are changes in between, like AS 22 taxes on income. Deferred taxation, one has to be very carefully dealing with. Now, AS 26 is another area where we see a lot of common mistakes because of the, I think, the overthrust on income tax. 35D of the income tax says that you can write off your preliminary expense only over 5 years, subject to certain ceilings, monetary ceilings. But under the AS 26 intangible assets, preliminary expenses have to be written off in the year in which they are incurred, because they cannot be recognized as assets. They do not meet recognition criteria. they are expenditure incurred for formation of the company has to be written off in the year in which they are incurred. Therefore, concepts like deferred revenue expenditure, preliminary expense are completely dead. There is no more head like miscellaneous expenditure to the extent not written off or adjusted. All those things are not there. The other day there was somebody talking about the corporates and some of the chartered accountants suggesting that the losses of the COVID period should be allowed to be capitalized and not written off. Only wishful thinking. As of now, there is no guidance and it may not be proper. Though it's a one-off event, the losses which have happened, certain capitalizations can happen when it comes to borrowing costs, for example. I would like to call COVID a force majeure situation, an act of God beyond the control of you and me. Therefore, if some of your capitalization items or development activity on qualifying assets, as they say in AS 16, stands suspended, stands substantially reduced, even then I am of the opinion that the interest during this period, capitalization should not cease. It can still be capitalized till the assets are ready for commercial use. So these are changes which one should be regularly keeping track of in dealing with the 29-2 accounting standards, which are now largely in the larger corporate sphere of the country, or India Incorporated has started calling them IGAAPs, Indian General Accepted Accounting Principles, because we have Ind AS, which is a slightly bigger or advanced version of the story. This is Ind AS, which I'm sure you are familiar. The last phase of Ind AS was applicable from financial year 17-18 onwards with comparatives. Now all listed companies, small and big, NSE and BSE, only 2 exchanges we have. Unlisted companies with net worth of 250 crores or more. Look at the third bullet point carefully. Holding, subsidiary, JV, associate of the above. If our client could be a small private limited company sitting in Cochin or Vizag, but his parent is a Mumbai company, Bada company with a net worth of 500 crores, then our small client in Vizag or Cochin will have to totally comply with Ind AS, because only then we can sensibly consolidate. Joint venture, I'm sure that in Andhra Pradesh, a lot of joint venture assignments will be there, kind of operations will be there. Associates, where you invest more than 20%, less than 50%. All those things will also be coming under Ind AS. And NBFCs are all NBFCs. Surprisingly, banks still reporting under IGAAPs, not under Ind AS. For reasons all of us know better, the balance sheets of banks are already stressed. So if you apply fair value and apply all the principles of expected credit loss and things like that as an Ind AS, then it will paint a very, very dismal picture, which will reflect on the health of the economy, which can be very detrimental at this point of time for the outlook for the country and for investments which are likely to come in. Therefore, everyone feels, who is in the know of things, feels that it is an orchestrated delay in the case of banks delaying or deferring or making the ministry not making it mandatory for banking companies. That's a different story altogether. NBFCs, of course, non-banking finance companies, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, we all of us have this NBFC culture. And our Muthoot, our Kerala Muthoot is one Red Muthoot managing director, is a CA rank holder, George Alexander Muthoot. And both the blue Muthoots and red Muthoots have a huge and active presence in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. I've seen some of the companies headquartered in Hyderabad doing the audits also. So this is the Ind AS applicability. I'm moving on now. Madam, I will be sharing the slide deck with you, the branch. So if some of the members are not able to follow this fully, note down this. I'll surely be sharing this. You can send it to the members.
Okay, sir. We shall circulate the same after we receive the mail, sir.
Yes. Now let's see cash flow statement. I was referring to the bullet points earlier. The cash flow statement, every company, all companies have to prepare, except who are exempted. A small company, startups, dormant companies, OPCs must prepare cash flow statements. So a small company definition in the 285 Act has also undergone a change. 2 subsection 85 defines a small company to be a company other than a public company, whose paid up capital does not exceed 50 lakhs, and earlier it was or, now the joint was and the turnover as per the latest audited accounts does not exceed 2 crores. And so to be a small company, to be eligible for exemptions like this, both the conditions are to be cumulatively satisfied. Neither should your capital be exceeding 50 lakhs, nor should your turnover be exceeding 2 crores. That's a 285 has been amended to change the joinder from or to and. Startups as defined in the industrial policy, 10 years now, not 7 years, should be registered. Even 10 years will be a startup. Dormant and OPCs, they don't have to. So all other companies have to prepare cash flow statements, in which case the auditor's report should also refer to the cash flow statement, say that gives a true and fair view of the cash flows during the period ended or for the period end. Depreciation, as now we are kind of used to, Schedule 2 gives the complete list of assets with useful life, and an arbitrary residual value is fixed at 5%. A question arises, can a company adopt a different useful life and different residual value? The answer is found in the next slide. I'll explain. For intangible assets, sir, AS 26 will continue to apply. AS 26 is intangible assets where amortization is a rebuttable presumption of 10 years. Intangible assets. But if it's computer software, web design costs, etc., it should be written off, can be written off over 5 years. Otherwise, normally 10 years is the finite life of a intangible asset presumed to be in the Indian context. India's treatment is slightly different. Now look at the way Infosys has shown it in the notes on accounts. Property, plant and equipment are stated at cost less accumulated depreciation and impairment, if any. Costs attributable to acquisition are capitalized until the property, plant and equipment are ready for use as intended by the management. The company depreciates property, plant and equipment over their estimated useful lives using straight line method. The estimated useful life of assets are as follows. Building machinery, etc. You see a footnote with the 1 which explains like this. Based on technical evaluation, the management believes that the useful lives as given above best represent the period over which the management expects to use these assets. Hence, the useful lives for these assets is different from the useful lives prescribed in Schedule 2 to the Companies Act 2030. But it starts by saying based on technical evaluation. The management and the auditor sitting in the boardroom cannot have a different useful life. It has to be based on technical evaluation. Either external or even internal expertise is fine. But one has to be careful dealing with that. And depreciation methods, useful lives, and procedure values are reviewed periodically, including at each financial year. I purposely culled out this portion of the Infosys annual report for reference to say that good corporate reporting practices almost match with what we learned in the textbooks. Almost, gel so much closely with what is prescribed by the statute or the regulation. We should also try to improve our presentations to this level. If not to this level, at least substantially we can still improve. If the FRRB findings is about you and me, about the profession at large. So we cannot say that, oh sir, we are a small firm, so for small company this is not applicable. Accounting standards in auditing are equally applicable for all kinds of companies, small and big. Of course, there are certain relaxations, all those things, segment reporting and all those things. But otherwise, we cannot be passive to this. One has to be keeping track of all these developments. That brings us to auditing standards. I did mention it is mandated under 143(9) for the purpose of company audits. Now we are discussing company audit, but what about non-corporate audits? So non-corporate audits, I need to take 5 minutes of your time. See, non-corporate audit, a tax audit, take for example, 44AB audit. Standards in auditing will apply whenever an opinion on financial statements is expressed. In Form 3CB, which is a non-corporate tax audit report, we are expressing an opinion. We are making a reference to the financial statements and saying that gives a true and fair view. Therefore, all the standards in auditing have equal applicability in non-corporate tax audits. Corporate tax audits, 3CA, no opinion, because we are referring to the company audit report either done by us or some other auditor. And then they saying that 3CD is true and correct. That is certification, not an opinion. So non-corporate tax audits also, I repeat, non-corporate tax audits also, standards in auditing will apply. Accounting standard, what about accounting standards? Or the simple question is, when we do tax audit, do we look into compliance with accounting standards? The answer from my side is yes. In my firm, we add additional notes, disclosures, make sure they comply. But the institute says that if there is non-compliance with the statute, you should qualify. Otherwise, if non-compliance with the accounting standard in a non-corporate situation or audit, you should make a reference to that in the auditor's report without making it a subject matter of audit qualification. Very vaguely they have said. So my point is, we are doing a tax audit, might as well ensure that accounting standards are complied with. Standards in auditing, yes, I did say 3CB cases, expression of opinion is there. Standards, all the standards in auditing are mandatory in nature. They would apply for non-corporate audits also. So planning the audit program, documentation, we'll see as we go by. NFRA started flexing its muscle. Those who are keeping track of latest developments, which I would like the membership to, particularly my younger colleagues, do connect to a larger world existence. Do not waste time on social media, trolls and things like that. Read the newspaper every morning. I read a local vernacular newspaper for 15-20 minutes. I study the business line every morning for half an hour. I study and don't read, not run through. Macroeconomic aspects, what are the changes which are happening, specific industry-related issues, articles concerning the profession and so on. So all of us should find time for that, and I am very, unfortunately, whenever I get time interacting with younger members, seniors or some of them, we are wasting a lot of time on social media. I still do not use WhatsApp. I do not have a Facebook account, but I firmly believe, and that you would agree, that I have a face, that I'm accessible. I don't think any call, I get calls from students from Vizag also sometimes saying that, sir, we have a problem like this. Maybe I say I'll call you back, but there's no call which is not replied. So please reduce on social media, focus more on what is relevant, what is not trivial. Auditing standards, some of them we will expound before we go into the last lap of the presentation, which is the COVID pronouncements. Professional skepticism, yes, at the contextual point, I did refer to that. It is SA 200, which says that the auditor should be a little doubting. He should not take things for granted, explanations for granted. Seniority as a stamp of trust. No, even senior tried servants of the employees have turned fraudsters against the management. So being a little doubtful. The biblical term I may use is a doubting Thomas. In these times of COVID, one has to be extremely skeptical about the explanations, the existence of assets, all those things. SA 210 talks about letter of engagement, agreeing on terms of audit engagement. Do not start an audit, sir, before getting a letter of engagement signed by the management. We give it to them, get it countersigned. SA 210, the format is there attached to it. Audit program. How many of us have an audit program for company audits? Large company audits we do here and there, and without a structured audit program, how do we think that all the important aspects can be covered? We must have that. If someone needs a copy of the audit program, I can share what we are using in our office. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. But if you Google up also, you'll get a lot of formats of audit programs. SA 315 talks about the audit risk, assessing audit risk by understanding the entity. Sir, knowledge of business, it used to be called one of the standards, AIS 20, if I remember correctly. Auditing and National Standard 20 was on the knowledge of business. The audit very knowledge about entity-specific knowledge, business knowledge. The industry to which belongs to a general idea about how the industry is doing in terms of businesses, GPs, business practices, business models, all those things. ratios. Then today, very importantly, in this unprecedented situation, a macroeconomic understanding, an understanding of the macroeconomic environment is also required to see whether what is stated is sustainable, or rather the assets which are carried in the books are really worthy of being carried forward. The 4 tax assets, all those examples are there. So knowledge of business is very, very important. So when it comes to audit evidence, the standard says the auditor should collect sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Sufficient is quantity, appropriate is quality, qualitative nature of evidence. It is not bulk of the evidence that what matters, relevance of the evidence. So substantive procedures to collect sufficient appropriate evidence. So what is the decision or report on Deloitte when it failed in the IL&FS? The report of the NAFRA, which runs into 90 pages. The crux of the report is 2 things. The auditor did not exercise due diligence as was expected of him. The auditor did not, or the auditor failed to collect sufficient appropriate evidence to base his assertions of the opinions on. So this is equally applicable for us tomorrow if we are taken to a disciplinary proceedings. So last year, as chairman, when I was sitting in SIRC, used to see a lot of members being drawn up for disciplinary cases. DC meetings used to happen in SIRC. We have no access. It is in a completely closed environment they do. And we in the administration are advised by Central Council members not to interact with the members who are lined up for disciplinary proceedings. They are like criminals. So generally, kind of a distance is very unfortunate. Sometimes for being passive. Sometimes the younger members being in a hurry, not communicating with the previous auditor, getting his consent, making sure that his fees is paid. By resorting to, very unfortunately, by resorting to, short-term advisory gains for very small amount of gains, so they yield, they stoop to a very dangerous extent. Residents association, some flat residents association, there's a dispute. There could be problems. All the small trusts, religious trusts and all that. The auditor thinks that the trustee is God himself. It is not. They're all human beings. They're all being caught. So 500 is audit evidence. 501 is special considerations for specific items, including inventory verification, segment reporting and all that. 505 is external confirmation. Sir, do we get confirmations these days? As students, remember, our bosses used to ask, get bank confirmation, a list of bank accounts and bank accounts. Do we get it now? If not, please do. 510 is about opening balance checking, initial engagements, like what we have done in this particular case of a hospital project, where we are yet to see the original of the title deeds. Without that, we will not sign the balance sheet. Basic evidence, 12-13 crores of investment in land to construct a hospital on a later late. 520 is analytical procedures. Analytical procedure, very important standard. So let's say 580 is management representations. We should get representation letter from the management. We call it LOR in our office, letter of representation from the management on the various assertions. All assets have been included, no major omissions, liabilities have been provided for, all bank accounts have been displayed, stock value is so much, stock has been physically verified, and so on, the story goes. And lastly, forming an opinion and reporting. SS 700, auditor's report. 705, how to modify a report. Sir, qualified report, adverse report, disclaimer of opinion. Report need not be always a clean report. We are all scared to issue qualified reports. Last year, in a government, state government organization and 2 of our private sector clients, we issued adverse opinion, saying that the financial statements do not give a true and fair view. In other cases, we qualified the reports. And how to qualify all that is given in SS 705. We do not use the term subject to anymore. The new terminology is except for matters mentioned in the basis for qualified opinion paragraph, the financial statements give a true and fair. 706, emphasis of matter paragraph if required. of a lesser intensity and gravity than that of qualification, the auditor may have to highlight, hey, look here, there are certain things which are of concern, but we're not qualifying here, but giving a word of caution, something like a orange light, not the red light, orange light, blinking the orange light here, you take note of this, be careful. An auditor's report. The new format on the left-hand side, you can see the title, the addressee. Right away starts with the opinion. Only after that, the basis for opinion comes up. Going concern, if it's a doubt. I think I have an annual report where Grant Thornton has made a blanket emphasis of matter in the COVID scenario on the going concern. I'll just read it out for you. We draw attention to note 2.37 of the accompanying standalone financial statements. It describes the uncertainties due to the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on the company's operation and the management's evaluation of the impact on the standalone financial statements of the company as on the balance sheet date. In view of these uncertainties, the impact of the standalone financial statements is significantly dependent on future developments. So very generic, concludes by saying our opinion is not modified in respect of this matter. This is an example of emphasis of matter paragraph, a generic one given by Grant Thornton in one of our listed company clients where we have internal auditors. Tomorrow is AGM. So those things have to be highlighted. Key audit matters I did mention for the time being, it's only for listed companies. Management's responsibility, auditor's responsibility, other reporting responsibilities, signature, date, place. Something is missing here. Can anyone of you help me? I purposely not mentioned something here. It is auditor's report, therefore, essentially should have something more. Sir, I'm talking about the UDIN, the unique document identification number. Many of our members still not registered on the UDIN portal. So any document having figures which you certify, it could be an auditor's report, it could be a tax audit report, it could be a concurrent audit report, it could be a net worth certificate, it could be contribution, promoter's contribution certificate, turnover certificate. Anything that carries a figure on which you lay your signature on should be accompanied by an UDIN. It's a great insulation for chartered accountants. I am totally against chartered accountants associating with tax practitioners. Yeah, they were called STPs, ITPs. Now they started GST also. They carry something called the suitcase practice. They do not let, particularly my younger brethren, there is a shortage of work. They might bring some files to you for signature. Do have a client KYC. You should meet the client. Very important. They are not professionals. We cannot associate with them. Let them refer clients. There is no problem. We will meet the client, do the audit, and they get some accounting assignments out of that. Let them benefit. We cannot share the fees with them. These are all unhealthy practices which is bringing a lot of quality issues in the audit sphere. So with UDIN, these guys, some of them carry your seal and they know how to put your signature also. That seal is not enough now. The end users, the bankers are now told very clearly not to rely on this thing. They are being sensitized to say that the auditor's signature without any UDIN. UDIN is OTP controlled. It comes to your mobile phone. So don't even share with your students. Today, if an auditor's report has to be generated, a student will come, sir, can I generate one? The OTP will come, and then in visibility only, that will be then the UDIN, I'll get the message. Based on that, I'll sign. Please do. This is a very good control mechanism. This insulates every one of us from dubious operators like tax practitioners who will steal the stamp and signature of the chartered accountant, misrepresent the chartered accountant. That cannot happen. Those fellows have to be happy with what they're capable of doing. Should never get into the attestation space. In my office, It's a complete no entry for such guys, complete no entry. So on that, let me take a slight detour before we go into the next part of the presentation. Another, I think, 10-15 minutes we can conclude.
Sir, a query is received in the chat box. Do you want to address
Yeah, I will see.
at the end of the session, sir?
I will surely look at the query. 1 minute. In the chat box, it is there. Yeah. Sir, as per 4A of the Payment of Gratuity Act 1972, the companies are obligated to obtain an insurance from gratuity liability. For the gratuity liability, has it been notified yet? To the best of my knowledge, most of the companies are not obtaining this cover. To my knowledge also, Sir Ramakrishna Pusala, sir, it is not notified. Many of the companies still even go to the extent of not providing for gratuity. I'll go one step further. In this COVID situation, many of the companies have retrenched, sent back many of their employees. Gratuities have not been provided for over the years. Forget funding of it, sir. Gratuity liability, yes, obtaining insurance for gratuity liability, it is not mandated. But even provision is not made. So suddenly they will get a huge hit in the P&L and all that. I have worked in the Middle East. I have some familiarity with what is happening in the Middle East, where the labor law is so strict that the termination benefits of employees have to be given within 2 months. Where the end of benefits, end of service benefits provision is one of the very important audit considerations in a less regulated environment like the Middle East, such as Dubai or Saudi Arabia. But there, they are mandatory required. The labor courts will act so fast that the entire eligible retirement dues or termination benefits have to be paid. So that is provided for. Here I have seen annual reports where saying that gratuity liability is accounted on cash basis only. Companies. Whereas companies, cash basis is not allowed. Section 2, subsection 13 says that books of accounts have to be under double entry and on accrual basis, mandatory. Cash basis is not an option for companies. I've seen in one annual report a terminology which is very strange. Gratuity is accounted under pay as you go method. I don't know who invented that method. He wanted to say in very layman's terms that we will pay gratuity as and when each and every employee go and account under pay as you go method. These are all new inventions, accounting gimmicks which happen. Sensibly, though it is mandatorily required, not required, this 4A, to my knowledge, coming to the answer again, it's not done. But in the real practice, the companies are not even providing for the accruing liability, let alone funding it through an insurance policy. I hope I have answered that question. Now, before we go into
thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your.
Thank you, Ram sir. Now, before we go into the COVID pronouncement, something which we have been debating on last week, I addressed Kakinada, East Godavari and West Godavari together, Kakinada and West Godavari branch, Eluru, and where I've been suggesting to members that about this provisional balance sheet and the projected financial statements. And not related to company audit. See, take for example, you and I have clients who are partnership firms with, let's say, turnover of 80 to 90 lakhs per annum, 80 to 90 lakhs. What kind of clients are they? Are they audit clients? The answer is no, because there's no mandatory requirement to get their accounts audited. They are approaching us because they are running a business with some turnover. They are approaching us for two reasons. One is that year-end, their financial statements are to be sensibly prepared, underline sensibly prepared, for them to file a tax return, arrive at the statement of total income, net profit as per P&L account, so much, stock is all valued and taken, GST return, turnover is matched. Overall, a compilation is done. And they file a tax return. For filing the tax return also, for this non-corporate client, a partnership firm with 80 lakhs of turnover, auditor signature is not required. We have stopped assigning such balance sheets long back in my firm as a policy. And this client is not an audit client. He is seeking accounting expertise, technically speaking. So we are guided by, please note down, SRS 4410. I don't have a slide on that, but I'll explain briefly. SRS 4410, Standard on Related Services 4410, which is captioned as engagements to compile financial information. Even the term auditor's remuneration, the term audit should not be used anywhere in those financial statements which we help the client prepare to file his tax return. So your signature is not required. But some of us are just like that, blindly signing. Please avoid it, it's prohibited. You cannot sign that. I'll come to that a little later. Now, I've seen even chartered accounts going to the extent of preparing statement of total income of the client, even salary client, individual client, partnership firm, on the chartered accounts letterhead. Please do not own up anything that is you are not supposed to own up. Maybe there are a lot of senior members glued to this presentation virtually. With due respect, I'm not making any ruling here. I'm very vocal on this. Let us not invite trouble. We think that disciplinary proceedings only for Big Four in Mumbai and Delhi. No. Cochin and Vizag equally applicable. So why invite trouble saying owning up what the client is? It is a self-assessment which the client can file the return and finish off. If at all we are associating our name with such financial statements, it should be signed as a refer compilation report. So please do refer SRS 441. And the practice, common practices, we sign prepared from the books of accounts produced before us and on the information given to us. Prohibited. Subject to audit, the chartered account designing subject to audit. Provisional subject to audit, the chartered account designing prohibited. So in Kakinada, the chairman sir asked me, Devi Kumar sir asked me, George, what is the logic behind this? Chartered accountant should not sign provisional financial statements. I answered this question like this. Sir, you are advertising for a driver. You want to have a driver for your office. You have a lot of running around. Naturally, the driver should have good health, so you insist on a medical certificate. You should have good eyesight. You should not have a high blood pressure, all those things. A lot of health problems you should have. Late night driving, you travel extensively in Andhra Pradesh. So in late night driving on the highways of Andhra Pradesh where vehicles fly at 120, 140 kilometers. I am making an application with the medical certificate. Jomon is applying for your driver's job with a medical certificate. Jomon K. George, this is to certify that Jomon K. George is having good health, subject to blood test, urine test, BP test, TMT, liver function test, eye test, all those things. Will you appoint me or not? So the audited certificate is subject to audit is because again I am putting the blame on the banker. Your bank manager, SBI Vizag, he will say that any sheet of paper which goes to him should have a stamp of a chartered accountant. Why should we concede? We are sensitizing the bankers. The institute is doing all that is possible that this should not be allowed. Then members say that, sir, if I don't do it, somebody else will do it. For that I have no answer. I have stopped doing it. And no client is told that, sir, we cannot sign. Sometimes you call the bank manager and say that, how do you sign the provisional? No, my predecessors used to collect all this. Predecessor was wrong, you are also wrong, we will not sign. Sometimes for the client, we speak to the manager also. So provisional financial statement should not be signed. Now the manager will also say that, sir, this year's audit is not required, provisional. 2 years projected also signed by the chartered accountant, auditor. 2 years projected financial statements also. We cannot sign projected financial statements. It is based on all assumptions. The managing director would say, sir, this year we had only turnover of 1 crore, but next year we'll have 10 crores. Based on that, we want to enhance our ODCC from 50 lakhs to 3 crores. Bank manager is very helpful. He will help us out. All he wants is projected financial statements, business plan signed by you. We cannot. Again, SAE 3400, Standard on Assurance Engagement 3400, tells us if at all we want to associate with project reports or projected financial information. They are called prospective financial information based on a rosy business plan of the management. Give me an Excel sheet. I know some of our friends in Vizag are very good at Excel. In Excel sheet, you give me a loss-making company. Next year, I'll make it profit-making. Madam, third year, we'll declare dividend. Fourth year, bonus issue. Fifth year, IPO. Henna, we can do that. But these are all rosy business plans, which we may help the client to prepare, but we'll never associate our name with that. So, making a slight detour from company audit, Provisional financial statements, subject to audit, all those things have to stop. Please refer SRS 4410. Projected financial statements, because one small bank manager of a bank in Vizag is insisting on that, do not concede. We are much above the bank manager. We should convince the client. And we have been yielding to the client so much. I've been trained. I did my articles in Chennai, 88 to 91, qualified in 92. Firm called Varma & Varma, Kerala-based firm, having operations now in Hyderabad. Also, they have an office now, where we have been all trained to have only a detached attachment with the client. And we take so much of the client's problem into our system. No? The client has an appeal tomorrow. He will be happily in the club. In the Voltaire Club, maybe. Prasanna has taken me there. I have pleasant memories of an evening well spent in the very, established by the Britishers. Till I think 1960 or so, the presidents were all Britishers. The client will be having a relaxed drink, no harm, let him have. And we would be struggling, late working into the night, working on appeal papers, this, that, and not able to sleep. That cannot happen, sir. The client's problem has to be taken with a lot of detachment. We fight for the case like advocates. We fight. We represent the client properly, prepare the case, develop argument notes and all that. It should not affect our sleep. Many of our friends are today having health problems because of the work stress. In Cochin, I have seen many of them. They do not drink, they do not smoke. The stress is only work stress. At a young age of 45, 50, they get a heart problem or very high hypertension. All this because we are yielding too much to the client. So we have to educate the client, and some of the clients may leave. I think all of us at some point of time are today capable of missing out. We can afford to miss out a few clients for good reasons. That brings me to the last part of the presentation, Ma. Another 10 minutes, so we will round up. Of course, we can have questions taken. COVID pronouncements, as I mentioned earlier, expounded, meaning explained in detail. Going concern assessment, making a reference to accounting standard 1, where it talks about going concern as an assumption, it should not be. Events occurring after the balance sheet date also, if it makes sure that the management has decided, we can't pull on like this, let us close down the business. Maybe they're deciding now. So 31st March also, the business has come to a closure. SA 570, standard noting 570 tells us how to deal with the situation where going concern is in doubt. Management should assess the impact of COVID-19 and the measures taken on its ability to go as a continuous going concern. Goes without saying. The impact of COVID-19 after the balance sheet date should also be considered. Inventory, look at this. Write down of inventories to net realizable value, because cost and net realizable value, whichever is lesser. Due to reduced movement, decline in selling prices, inventory obsolescence due to lower expected sales, etc. Not only that, inventory may have to be written off. For example, if you have dates, if you're a pharma company, date sensitive materials, so raw materials for tablets or medicines, they are very date sensitive. After that particular date should not be used. You're prohibited from using them. All those things may have to be because it could not be used, because it be sold, that has to be written off. And what you have in cost, net realizable value have gone down substantially. So lesser of that being NRV, we should reassess the NRV and state it at realizable values. Normal production capacity to be reviewed for allocation of fixed production overheads. That's slightly technical. When it comes to allocation of fixed production overheads, we normally take an attainable normal level of capacity. It's not installed capacity. Maybe in the first few years, we attain only 15-20% capacity. But if we say that the normal attainable capacity is 40-45%, based on that is we do allocate the fixed production overheads. But in the post-COVID scenario, when production resumes, you may not be able to reach that level of 40-45%. You may continue to run at 25-30%. Then your allocation should be based on that, meaning that your per unit allocation of fixed overheads will remain more increased in respect of that reduced level of operations. Impairment considerations are in case of loans, receivables, etc., financial assets such as loans may not be realizable. I used to ask this in the early days of the COVID lockdown. When the lockdown came, we asked, we are 8 partners in my introduction, 5 of us sit here. All the 4 here are my students. They did articles with me, all young partners. The senior most is 42 and the youngest is 26, 27. They were my students in this office. We have developed that kind of a system. And we had a meeting and we asked ourselves a few questions, which is relevant in this context. One, do we have the reserves? If the lockdown continues for 2-3 months, do we have the reserves to meet our administrative expenses, the rent, the salaries, the stipend, the administrative expenditure, the internet communication costs? 2, for our withdrawals, partners, the drawings. All of us have home loans, vehicle loans, children are studying. So we asked this question. We said, yes, kind of 2 to 3 months, okay. Some of them, some reserves in the bank in the form of deposits, some investments, and of course, some receivables were genuinely receivable from healthy, strong clients who do not have problem. That is the first question. The second question was that, yes, what are our receivables? If it's huge, will that be received? Because if we have been very soft on clients pre-lockdown, how can we ask them for a lockdown period? The businesses are very substantially reduced. Some of them are not functioning at all. Tourism industry in Kerala, for example. I did mention about the convention center. Large number of resorts in Munnar, in Wayanad, you have come for residential programs. I'm sure Andhra Pradesh also have a lot of tourism projects where people are not willing to go because people are scared. Why go and invite trouble because sterilization is not proper? Maybe in that room somebody stayed the previous night. So resorts are allowed to be open under unlock 4 in Kerala, but very few takers for, except for very small exclusive properties, takers are not there. So to those clients, how do we go and ask them for payment now? Because they're not, the revenues have come to a grinding halt, so to say. I said, yes, our receivables were not much. That is one thing which tells us that do the work promptly, agree on the fees, bill it, collect promptly. I'm coming to that one slide towards the end of it. In all our bills, my firm's name is JVR, in all our bills, we say all our bills are immediately payable immediately. Well, with that audit, we may give months credit, not more than that. So receivables were not very high. But even there, today when I look back, we would have given discount about maximum 2 lakhs. Not even that much, maybe. It's all the discounts which we have to give because of things like that. We have some credit. But not be the case in the business. And some of our who is very helpful in organizing conference games. All the tax all that we got later, then we relaxed. We did the of
Sir, I think a technical issue has arisen again for the speaker. We shall wait for a minute for him to log in again. Meantime, members, if you are having any queries, you may post in the chat box. Sir, you please on your video and unmute yourself, sir. Joman ke George, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Also visible, sir.
Somebody speak up. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Screen is visible?
Yes, sir. Screen is visible.
Okay. Thank you. I'm back.
Your audio is not so clear, sir. Some glitches in the between.
I see. For some time now or towards the end of it?
In between, it's coming, sir. Not continuously.
Oh my God. Is it reasonably okay now?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Normally, we don't have a connectivity issue here, but today I think twice it went off, maybe because of the rains or something like that, the cable, whatever. Okay, so we ask these questions, and so say in businesses it can happen that realizable assets like loans and receivables may not be realized. So one has to be extremely careful in dealing with it. Investments may decline in value other than temporary in nature, permanent decline in value of real estate shares, real estate holdings. One has to be carefully seeing that. Fair value of current assets, current investments, as in AS 13, should be looked into. Recognition of revenue may stand postponed because of uncertainties involved. Pending contracts completion. Accounting standard 9 should be given special thrust on. Property, plant and equipment, yes. Useful life and residual life of property, plant and equipment may need revision. Take, for example, a fleet operator. The vehicles may be idling for quite some time. You know, the luxury buses like Volvo buses, Tempo travelers, Innova cars, all of them may be lying idle. The useful life as well as the realizable price in the given context may substantially be less. One has to provide for it. Expectations may differ from previous estimates. All those things have to be careful. And depreciation. One has to be clear that depreciation has to be charged even when assets are lying idle. Capitalization of interest, I did mention. I am of the opinion that during COVID times, if development activity is suspended due to COVID, it can be a force majeure and still interest can be capitalized, need not be expensed. Taxes on income, accounting standard 22. You know that if deferred tax assets are represented by unabsorbed losses and depreciation, they should be carried only if there is virtual certainty about future profits. Virtual certainty. So if future profitability is very doubtful, going forward is doubtful, then the deferred tax assets may have to be written down. So those are the aspects, sir, which I thought, and madam, are important in the context of company audit 1920. Quickly to recapitulate, we touch upon the basics of company audit. What are the key aspects one should focus on? Then we focused a little bit on accounting standards. Also try to understand which are companies to which index is applicable. If yes, we'll follow index. Then we touched upon standards on auditing, which are equally important mandatory under the Companies Act now under 143.9. And towards the end of the presentation, as the caption of the topic I wanted, or rather members to know, a special standard.
Sir, again there is some technical issue, sir. We are unable to hear you clearly. Sir, nothing is audible, sir. Hello? Sir.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry for this. First time it's happening. Extremely sorry. So then we touch upon audible now, ma'am. I'll round up in 5 minutes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir. Audible.
Okay. So then we touched upon standards and auditing and of course the COVID related pronouncements. The key point is one has to be more careful, more diligent, more doubting, more skeptical in the environment of when we are auditing, like in times like never before. We saw all that. And with that, let me round up the presentation. I can take a few questions, but before that, sir, there's a need to empower and change for every one of us. So infrastructure and technology is something which all of us should really spend time on, invest in. Most of us have very good mansions, houses, luxury cars, but when it comes to offices, many of our offices are suboptimal conditions. Our students work in that environment, so we should provide a healthy environment and good infrastructure. Technology goes without saying. COVID has taught us that technology is not an enabler. Technology is a driver. Without technology, how can Chairperson Bharati Devi can be smiling like this? Of course, there are glitches in between, saying that we got Jovan George from Cochin without spending any money and no memento also. And technology has enabled so much that Vizag members can discuss, and I get the opportunity to interact with my Vizag colleagues, a great opportunity. So technology is doubtlessly the driver, not enabler anymore. And sir, well-meaning firms in growth-oriented places like Vizag, you should have a good team of people, young partners, and put good processes, not just standards auditing for the theory of it. It could be an attendance, it could be a technology-driven monitoring for students like OneDrive and things like that. A lot of things we can work on. Billing and collection, I am very vocal about this. Bill properly, collect promptly, and agree on the fees at the initial stage itself. Do not give surprises. Financial planning, yes, personal financial planning, all of us have to improve. We do a lot of business plans for our clients, but personal financial planning, sometimes we are not very good at. I remember a few years back in Gundur in 2014, I asked this question. How many of are insured for more than 50 lakhs? Term insurance. No investment plan, no ULIP. How many of are insured for more than 50 lakhs? One senior member, I think it was one Rao sir, who got up and said, George, good question, but one small correction is required. Ask how many of you are insured at all. Okay, so that's very important that we do it. And also keep the family informed about what your assets, what your liabilities are. I give a monthly statement to my wife. She's not working, she's a homemaker. She's educated, she's a rank holder, but opted to be a homemaker. So I should tell her where the documents are, what are the things which one, in case something happens. So that is something which we should very much focus on, personal financial planning. I've already mentioned, do cut down on social media, whiling away time unproductively should not happen, younger members, and we should also be careful about the next generation. As parents, we have a responsibility to disconnect the new generation from social media. Unlimited hours of screen time, will really axe their aspirations. They'll not be able to achieve their dreams. So responsible parenting calls for restrictions also. A good parent is not one always says, yes, 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 you go ahead. No, stop here is also part of parenting. And in our offices, we have dissidents, amateur, we say 10% students are not very friendly, but we are gurus of a different type in a Gurukul system. So let us make our office a little more student friendly, develop an academic culture, give them leave for exams, have internal programs, ICASA programs, let them go and attend cultural programs, let them go on stage and display their capabilities for singing or a mime or a dance or whatever. Let them blossom, their life become more colorful. And our firms, offices should become happy organizations. When we leave today, when you leave home, close the office and go home, we're going home happy that day was well spent. For our clients, for my students, for my people around me, relaxed as a smiley satis. So these are the things which I thought very important. And I always firmly believe that there is much more to life than being a chartered accountant. But being a chartered accountant is a very gifted, coveted position. Socially, financially, we are all well off. We should stay connected to a larger world existence, help the less fortunate people, particularly in the COVID situation. People have gone jobless. The man on the street is having a lot of problems. Try to help them. We have a larger cause. Only then that our life will become more purposeful and useful for others. So with a big thank you to the organizers once again, to the chairman and all of you. Let me now conclude with a great gratitude from Jomon. Thank you so much. I can take, if there are questions, I can take a few questions. Is there anything in the chat box?
Members, they can unmute themselves and ask the questions, sir. No need of the chat box. We have given them the option to unmute themselves. Members, if no questions, we shall wind up the session.
Good evening, sir. I'm JV Ravindra.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. George. I'm JV Ravindra from Vizag.
Please tell me, sir. Please tell me.
Normally, what happens in receivables, loans and advances, the SSC, both the SSC and the auditor are really put under a lot of difficulties because SSC may not be able to now gauge what is the quantum of recoverable, because though we try to contact with the clients, during the COVID situation, most of the people are not available.